So this is going to be a little unusual in that Stalker is probably the last film that I would say has exercised a considerable influence on me. And what's odd about that is really the way it influenced me was really more a vindication of what I had already been doing without seeing it, but seeing it was sort of like an amplification of the kinds of things I would like to do. Now, when I say it's the last film I have been seriously influenced by, it's because it actually predates much of my work. It was made in 1979, I believe, and I didn't get around to seeing it, though, until my PhD days at USC in the early 90s. I was aware of Tarkovsky well in advance of this, but I had never gotten around to seeing any of his films, partly because his reputation for being just a touch too demanding on the viewer probably, I wouldn't say it put me off completely, but it was enough of an impediment for me not to seek out his work. And indeed, when I finally did see Stalker, it was under rather unusual circumstances in that it was being shown in one of the classes that was TA'd by a fellow student, and she insisted I go. And she said, you have to see it, you have to see it. And I'm glad she did, because I really should have seen it before that. Okay, so what is so significant about it? I would say that there are two aspects of Tarkovsky's work that are definitely in my work, but at the same time, as I said, when I saw his films, it was really more of just sort of a vindication of everything that I had been doing up to that point. Now, the first of these is the notion of texture. Now, anyone who has seen any of my films knows that texture, that's to say, literally the way things feel at any one moment, is very, very important to me. And I didn't learn it from Tarkovsky, but what I did get from watching Stalker was a superb example of using nature and water and all aspects of lighting and whatever to help to reinforce that notion of presence and texture. Now, that I think is almost a universal in all of Tarkovsky's films, but it's particularly strong in Stalker. Now, I also have always had in my work an eye for nature. But what I got from Stalker was an extremely receptive look at the world, which is another way of saying, I guess, that it was virtually impossible for Tarkovsky to look at anything without turning it into something beautiful. And he had an incredible gift for revealing patterns of light and movement in a frame. And I learned a lot from that. The related topic to all of this, which is in some ways even more important, however, is the idea of what I always refer to as a photogenic mess. What I like doing when I'm shooting stuff is to find a mess as a way of enhancing a sense of presence, but obviously trying to do it in a way that is also visually interesting. This is something that I have been doing for years and years. And when I saw Stalker, again, he was doing much more with it, much more deliberately than I have ever done. And so when I saw it, I said, yes, that's it. That's what I want to do. I will continue to do. And finally, what I learned from Stalker in particular, somewhat less true of Tarkovsky's other work, is the notion of the power of simplicity. I should say thematic simplicity, because Stalker is the film basically with only three people, aside from a couple minor characters who appear at the beginning. And so it's very concentrated and emphatic because of the effort to take the very simple situation and going deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, again, I'm not in Tarkovsky's class. I don't fool myself into thinking I am. But at least I can recognize with his model as an example of how the simplest thing can be redolent and can be made to be enough to captivate a viewer. So on that note, I will just shut up and move on.